Things really couldn't be going much worse for Donald Trump at this point. The economy is tanking, so is his approval rating, and for the first time in either of his two terms, we see CEOs and economists coming out and saying what we've always known. This guy is just bad for business. And what's worse in all of this for Donald Trump is as this negative coverage continues to come in, he doesn't even have his Fox propaganda outlet to help him spin it. There are so many anchors who are kind of fed up defending the indefensible because it's just embarrassing. And embarrassing is the perfect description of what happened when a Fox anchor did try to defend Donald Trump this morning and was confronted by Democratic Congressman Jack Cocchiarella, who absolutely wiped the floor with her, calling out Donald Trump's failures in a takedown that we are going to check out. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now let's take a look at this interview.
So Schumer said a shutdown would have been a gift to Trump because he owns the chaos in government and in the economy right now. He also warned that a shutdown could enable Trump to further dismantle the workforce, letting him decide which workers are and are not essential. But you urged Schumer in a letter to block this bill over Doge cuts and Elon Musk. If you wanted to save federal workers' jobs, how could you justify putting them on indefinite leave?
I think Democrats need to demonstrate to the American people at every opportunity that we have, and there are rare opportunities in the minority, how we would govern if we were given power. And voting for a bill that further empowers Trump to tank the economy and threaten our allies and take away benefits from veterans is not a good way of doing that. But certainly the Senate Minority Leader is right that Trump owns the chaos in Washington right now. And that chaos is teetering a good economy into a recession. American consumers right now have the highest inflation expectations in years. You got airline CEOs talking about decreased bookings, which is an early indicator of economic health. And nonpartisan experts are pointing out that his tariffs are going to raise costs on Americans by $2,000 every year. That's food, that's home and car insurance, that's clothing. This is a very expensive reality show out of Washington, D.C. right now for the average American.
Well, it comes down to whether lawmakers had the stomach for a shutdown. And it seems like, obviously, in the Senate, ultimately they did not. But what also became apparent is that Democrats might have failed to produce a caucus-wide strategy on this. You know, this funding deadline was looming on the calendar. What happened?
Democrats are in the minority in the House and the Senate, and of course we are out of the White House. And so after a defeat like that nationally, we're going to be debating internally as a party. I think that's exactly what American voters expect of us. They want us to be pushing forward new ideas, to be debating alternative modes of governance, to be challenging established leaders, because that's what you do when the American voters say that we are choosing the other party. And I think it would be much more concerning, actually, if Democrats were in lockstep behind the agenda that didn't win a voters' confidence in November. At the same time, Republicans have the power in the House, the Senate, and the White House, and American voters expect them to be capable stewards of the economy. And that's not what we are seeing right now. What we are seeing is chaos and corruption out of Washington, D.C., an increased federal deficit, despite claims from Doge, and increased costs on consumers.
Well, that debate is certainly happening. Pelosi urged Senate Democrats to vote against their leader. And then Hakeem Jeffries did not defend Schumer when it was all over. Listen to this.
Is it time for new leadership in the Senate?
Next question.
Have you lost confidence in him, the fact that you guys see this so differently?
Next question.
Some of your colleagues are reportedly urging Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to primary Schumer over this. Should she?
I'm less interested in candidates and people and more interested in ideas. Democrats need big and bold ideas about how we're going to lower costs for Americans by building more housing, by taking on the health insurance corporations. We need big ideas about how we're going to end the corruption in Washington, D.C. that's been on full display for the last 3 months. We need big ideas about peeling the bark off the social media corporations that are profiting by attention fracking our kids and by dividing us. Generational tension, debate over ideas is all healthy within the Democratic Party right now. What is unhealthy is when Republicans march in lockstep behind a commander-in-chief who seems to think that the biggest problem in the world right now is Canada.
That lockstep is what a lot of people are used to. Democrats are usually very aligned with their messaging. Politico said that Jeffries snubbing Schumer was the diss heard around the Capitol and in Democratic circles around the country, a distraction for Democrats that is yanking the headlines away from Trump's tough polling and a spiraling stock market. So the debate will continue, obviously, on whether Jeffries hurt the party by not defending Schumer.
Jack,
what's your belief?
Jackie, I think Americans are not that tuned in to what Beltway politicians are talking about at press conferences. I think they're very tuned in to what the Dollar General CEO is saying when he says that his consumers are only able to afford the bare essentials right now. This economy is inflationary right now. We are seeing spikes in home insurance, in car insurance, in utility bills, in food bills, in the cost to buy a new automobile. And you know what the Republicans' response to this is? Their response to this is, well, get ready for a rocky ride. And by the way, we're going to give tax cuts to the top 20% of earners in this country and pay for it by taking away health care from people who need health care. By taking away health care from kids who need it for primary care, from seniors who need it from at-home care, from people struggling with opioid use disorder. This is not going to scrub with the American people, and Republicans are responding by avoiding town halls so they don't have to take the tough questions.
But your party right now does not have a unified message or messenger. And there's obviously the debate we're talking about is which direction the party goes in. AOC called on Senate Democrats to use the filibuster to block this funding bill. A little bit ironic after she called to abolish the filibuster over abortion in 2022. In fact, 30 Senate Democrats who used the filibuster on Friday to block this funding bill previously voted to override the filibuster. 7 more campaigned to abolish it. You previously called to abolish the filibuster over gun control and abortion, but you are urging your Senate colleagues to use it this week. So should the Democratic Party of the future keep the filibuster or not?
I think that's a debate for the Democratic Party of the future. And we're going to need lots of these kinds of debates about how we lower costs, about how we protect Social Security in the face of onslaughts to privatize it by Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Senator Rick Scott out of Florida. I think you are offering the premise that somehow debate within the Democratic Party is a bad or unhealthy thing, and I'm embracing it. I think that this party needs generational debate about the issues. We have been too much in the lockstep in the past. What is a problem for Americans is when the party that has the levers of power in the House and the Senate and the White House doesn't seem to have anybody with the courage to tell the dear leader that, hey, you might be mistaking Russia and Canada. They're both big, northern, cold countries, but one of them's an enemy and one of them's an ally. He doesn't seem to get that.
The budget that the House and the Senate have passed is an absolute disgrace and runs counter to any of the narratives that Donald Trump is trying to push about the point of his tariffs, because there is no point. Because they're hurting Americans. Donald Trump doesn't understand how they work. Certainly Carol Levitt doesn't, as we've seen in a couple of videos. But this idea that they're pushing, the narrative around tariffs is that they're going to restore American manufacturing, that they're investing in the middle class, that we're going to build things in America again, which would be great if Donald Trump didn't see a mass exodus of manufacturing jobs under his first administration, if he didn't cut funding from the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act to invest in American manufacturing. It would be great for Donald Trump to say that we care about American farmers if he wasn't taking billions of dollars invested in their farms and invested in American agriculture from USAID when he cut it, or any of the many programs in environmental spending that helps farmers protect their land. It's just everything he says, of course, is a lie, but so clearly runs counter to everything he has already done in just a few short but incredibly damaging weeks of his presidency. It's all a lie, and it's why we have to hold him accountable, which is exactly what Bernie Sanders said, calling out the continuing resolution passed in the Senate in this clip right here.
I just voted no on this terrible continuing resolution written by right-wing Republicans in the House with no input from anybody but themselves. This bill moves our country toward authoritarianism by usurping Congress's constitutional responsibility to determine how federal funds are spent, and creates at the same time a slush fund for Elon Musk and Donald Trump to continue their war against the working families of our country. This bill puts more and more power into the hands of the White House. At a time when 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck and millions are struggling to keep their heads above water. This bill makes massive cuts to housing, health care, and nutrition, jeopardizes the functioning of the Social Security Administration, and continues the Trump administration's attack against veterans and the Veterans Administration. This bill will make the rich richer and the poor poorer. In order to pass this legislation, the Republicans needed 60 votes, which meant that they had to have 7 votes from Democrats, and they got them. Actually, they got 10 votes. That is sad. That is an absolute dereliction of duty on the part of the Democratic leadership. Nobody in this Senate should have voted for this dangerous bill. In America today, as all of you know, we face an unprecedented set of crises. We are moving rapidly toward an oligarchic form of society where Elon Musk and other billionaires are running the government. We are moving rapidly toward authoritarianism, where Trump is ignoring the Constitution and the separation of powers. We are moving rapidly toward a massive Republican bill, a reconciliation bill, that will cut Medicaid and other programs desperately needed by working families in order to provide the 1% with over $1 trillion in tax breaks. And in the midst of all of that, climate change, the existential threat to our planet, is completely ignored by the Republican leadership. So, where do we go from here? As you've heard me say many times, the economic and political crises facing our country will not be solved here in Washington, D.C. The system is just too corrupt. As a result of Citizens United, billionaires are able to spend unlimited sums of money buying and selling politicians, and that is what they do. Further, on any given day, thousands of corporate lobbyists roam the halls of Congress doing the bidding of their corporate masters. If there has ever been a time in the modern history of our country where ordinary people at the grassroots level have got to stand up and fight back, now is that time.
Everything Trump does is to serve his billionaire buddies. We know that. It's clear. And it is our job to call it out, and we are certainly going to on the show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.